6:52 the time now. It was one of the RAF's most daring and legendary raids, immortalised in the 1954 film Dambusters.
Today marks exactly 70 years since 19 Lancaster bombers took off from a runway in Lincolnshire, each carrying a purpose-built weapon, the bouncing bomb, and then dropped them in Nazi Germany's industrial heartland.
As commemorations to mark the raid are held, the BBC's North of England correspondent Danny Savage has been to meet one of the last remaining survivors.
In a cinema in Lincolnshire last night, there was a very special showing of a very famous film. 70 years on, there was even one of the veterans in the audience. Bomb aimer Johnny Johnson, on the far left, who's now 91, told me how he flew round his target deep in enemy territory 10 times before he was satisfied they had it exactly right.
Crew humorist, Dave Roger in the rear turret. After about the 6th or 7th time he ran and said, "Won't somebody get that bomb out of here?" Considering the amount of time we'd spent on training, not particularly low flying over the continent, going in and home again, it meant to me to do it, not do it properly, was a waste of time.
In May 1943, this most daring raid successfully breached 2 dams in Nazi Germany. It immortalised the men who flew the Lancaster bombers involved. They honed their skills to fly at 60 feet and drop a bomb which would bounce off the water over dams and reservoirs in Derbyshire. And later today, weather permitting, this Lancaster bomber will recreate that sight of one of these flying low over the water in the Peak District. It's a big deal for the crew of this plane as they pay tribute to the people who did it for real 70 years ago.
They had to fly those aeroplanes, the example of which you can see behind me, a big aeroplane at precisely 60 feet, at precisely 232 miles per hour, and they had to be at a precise distance from that dam. And the fact that they came up with a method of doing that and they practiced that very, very difficult task, not only by day, but they did it by night, is just unimaginable.
53 members of 617 Squadron were killed during the mission. The daughter of Barnes Wallace, the inventor of the bouncing bomb, told me how he mourned their loss.
He felt it was his invention that had destroyed them. Of course it wasn't. It was in a way and it wasn't in another way. But that's what he felt, and he was very, very, very sad for the rest of his life.
The commemoration of the Dambusters raid will see some spectacular flypasts to remember the ingenuity and courage involved. And at sunset today, there will be a special service to remember those on both sides who died 70 years ago tonight. Danny Savage, BBC News, Lincolnshire.
Now on BBC One, it's time to join the BBC News teams wherever you are. Goodbye.
.400 guests, including veterans, are to mark the 70th anniversary of the Dambusters raid in a sunset ceremony at RAF Scampton. In the last few minutes, the Battle of Britain memorial flight Lancaster bomber has passed over Derwent Water, where the Dambusters trained. On this day in 1943, as night fell, 19 Lancasters with 133 men on board left RAF Scampton near Lincoln in one of the most daring raids in modern warfare. Their mission, to fly at low level and drop bouncing bombs that would destroy a series of dams, causing large-scale destruction and loss of life in Germany's industrial heartland. Just after midnight, the first of 2 dams was breached. By dawn, the last of the Lancasters had returned to Lincolnshire, but 53 men and 8 aircraft had been lost. Well, Leanne Brown is at RAF Scampton now. Leanne, how significant are today's events?
Well, they're immensely important, not just for the veterans and the families, but also for the current members of the RAF and indeed the people of Lincolnshire who turned out to watch the Lancaster. It took off from the runway behind me, and just before it did, I spoke to one of the pilots who said it was a bit like steering a shopping trolley with a wheel missing. But despite the rain that we've got now, it was perfect conditions for flying. With a wave and a smile, today's takeoff was very different to 70 years ago.
Well, it's absolutely immense privilege to be able to fly this aircraft. Compared to modern aircraft, it's much more like a living animal. When you start the engines, she roars into life, and it's an incredible experience.
At this moment in 1943, crew members were just hearing about their mission.
They had this a model of the dam, and I looked at the dang thing, and there was these gun turrets sitting on that dam. I thought, "Boy, this is it, because we're not going to make that one."
Wing Commander Gibson achieved one of the most devastating attacks of the war.
Speaking after the raids, Wing Commander Guy Gibson recalled that fateful night.
That raid on the dams was the one time when we knew that we were going to die or not die, as the case may be. You know, the hair which was hanging on our life was very thin.
Yes.
And then there's just a funny empty feeling in the stomach, but you're not frightened.
For some watching today's flypast, it brought back memories.
When it took off, it did bring tears to my eyes because the thunder and the noise from the engines, and I imagined myself navigating up there.
Today, crowds came to remember and reflect what the Dambusters did. Well, the Lancaster has, in the last half hour, arrived in South Yorkshire. It's crossed over the Derwent Reservoir. That, of course, was a key testing site for the Dambusters, who practiced their low-flying techniques and approaching a dam. Now, the Lancaster will now return here to RAF Scampton for tonight's service of remembrance.
It was one of the most ambitious and daring raids of the Second World War. Men in Lancasters led by 24-year-old Guy Gibson, dropping specially designed bouncing bombs on German dams. It is the 70th anniversary of the Dambusters raid, and this is a Lancaster today showing where the crews practiced at Derwent Water in Derbyshire. At around this time, on the 16th of May 1943, the men had just learned what their targets would be. RAF Scampton is the original home of the Dambusters, and 400 people, including veterans, have gathered there this evening for a sunset service. Phil Connell is there now. Phil, just how important are today's events?
Well, tonight marks one of the most memorable operations, Peter, of the Second World War. The Dambusters raid, of course, has become a legendary story, which many people say played a key role in helping the Allied forces to secure their victory. And here at Scampton tonight, preparations have been underway all day ahead of this special service. Many people here just quietly reflecting on what was happening at the airbase 70 years ago tonight. It's the one mission that's etched in his memory. Sergeant Johnny Johnson was back today at RAF Scampton to mark the 70th anniversary of his squadron's famous raid.
Under these circumstances, it's great to be back, to think about that particular night. And the thrill, yes, it was a thrill that we got from doing the job that we had to do.
On the 16th of May 1943, Johnny was 21 years old. He's now one of just 3 surviving members of the Dambusters raid, whose mission to help bomb German dams many say influenced the outcome of the Second World War.
I think they played a tremendously important role in the Second World War. It was one of the most significant raids. I think the fact that it has earned its place in history is testament to that.
Other events to commemorate the anniversary began this afternoon. In Derbyshire, a flypast was held over Derwent Dam, the place where the squadron trained in preparation for the raid. Hundreds turned out to see the spectacle, aircraft including the iconic Lancaster, similar scenes no doubt to the ones back in 1943. Throughout the day, World War II actors have set the scene at Scampton ahead of this evening's sunset service.
And you wait until your navigator had done its pre-flight planning.
70 years ago on this night, it was around this time the squadron was leaving. Preparations for tonight's service have been taking place here all day, and at Scampton the atmosphere is beginning to build, with thoughts of those brave men who 70 years ago tonight were about to embark on their historic mission. And for the daughter of Barnes Wallis, the man who invented the bouncing bomb, tonight's service will bring many moments of reflection.
It's a long time to look backwards. I think it's wonderful. I think they deserve every moment of praise that they get, even if it is 70 years ago.
The Dambusters' legendary story has long inspired an ageing generation. 70 years on, it's hoped the squadron's sacrifice can now inspire a different generation too. Well, that commemorative service will be starting here in about 15 minutes' time. Many of the 400 guests from all over the world, as we can see behind us, beginning to take their seats here. But really, having been here all day, what has struck home for me was the age of these airmen, many of them just 20 and 21 years old. Really difficult to imagine, Peter, what they must have been thinking out here 70 years ago tonight.
Absolutely. Phil, thank you very much indeed. And services of remembrance are also taking place today in Germany, in the communities close to the dams where 1,600 lives were lost in the floodwater. Crispin Rolfe has been following people from Lincolnshire as they travel through Europe to Guy Gibson's grave and the Myrna Dam, which was targeted in the raids.
He was my war hero, so we started cleaning the graves once a month, which we have done ever since.
Tributes at cemeteries from the Netherlands to East Yorkshire and Lincolnshire. Everyone here has a story to tell about Guy Gibson and the Dambusters.
My father-in-law looked after Gibson's whisky while he was away, and they used to hide it in a potbelly stove.
My grandfather was actually at Scampton at the same time the Dambusters raids was going on, although he wasn't a part of 617.
But whatever the stories, any aviation enthusiast's tour should always end here at Squadron 617's target, the Myrna Dam. They flew from upstream of the dam, arriving just after midnight, almost skimming the surface of the water. Enemy fire took down one plane and its crew, but on the fourth attempt, they managed to breach this then symbol of German might. However, in doing so, they spilt millions of tons of water onto the valley and its people below. The Dambusters' aim had been to stem this dam's flow of war-sustaining industry, but Karl-Heinz Wilmers from Guna remembers the attack and the subsequent tsunami, which killed slave labourers and civilians in their hundreds.
Ich war damals 5 Jahre alt und wir wurden geweckt durch den Fliegeralarm, die Sirenen heulten.
We were in the cellar and our grandmother suddenly said, "They've hit the dam." And the dam had broken. And the next morning, the children went down to see what damage there was, but they were prevented.
Das ist nichts für die Kinder.
1,200 people died as the Dambusters altered Germany's map, but were the lives worth it? Some argue that the tide of war had already turned, others that the repairs here pulled away vital workers from Hitler's Atlantic Wall, thereby enabling the Allies to invade in 1944. For the Panton brothers from East Kirkby in Lincolnshire, it comes down to hindsight. Their brother, a victim of the war, and this, their first visit to the Myrna Dam.
It's just, you take it in awe, and to think that those Lancasters, and to breach this dam, you wouldn't have thought it was humanly possible.
They repaired this dam after all the damage had been, and there's shattered lives. The scars are very slow to fade, but they are fading.
So tonight here in Germany, a special commemoration. But this dam will not be the focus of attention. Instead, it will be the lives of the people who were lost here. Crispin Rolfe, BBC Look North, at the Myrna Dam.
Hundreds of people have gathered at RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire to remember one of the most ambitious and daring raids of the Second World War. A special service has taken place to pay tribute to the 53 airmen that lost their lives. Well, Phil Connell is at Scampton. I guess it was a very emotional evening, Phil?
Well, tonight marks one of the most memorable operations of the Second World War, Amy. The Dambusters raid has, of course, become a legendary story. And here at Scampton tonight, the 70th anniversary has been remembered in style. We've had military bands, flypasts, but also some quiet, reflective moments too. It was exactly 70 years ago when Lancaster bombers flew out of RAF Scampton, and tonight one of them was back for this evening's special commemorative service. 2 of the 3 surviving members of the Dambuster Squadron were also here to see it. At this evening's service in Scampton, there were military bands and more flypasts. 400 invited guests had gathered here, all quietly reflecting on what had happened at the airbase on the 16th of May, 1943.
Yeah, it's a tremendously powerful link. Having the Lancaster back here at Scampton, just behind you there's the office of Guy Gibson, and this is the hangar that the crews would have walked from when they went to go and fly those missions. So it just makes it a truly memorable evening.
And also present at tonight's service was Mary Stokes Rowe, the daughter of Barnes Wallis, the man who invented the bouncing bomb. Seen here with the 2 surviving members of the raid, a memorable night they were pleased to have been a part of.
Well, I was lucky, really lucky to get right through the war. I thought it was, luck was on. I played a large part in those that came back and survived the war.
The Dambusters' legendary story has long inspired an ageing generation. 70 years on, it's hoped tonight's spectacular scenes can now inspire a different generation too.